All right, it is November 14th, and we are back at our cover crop demonstration plot. As you can see, and kind of around the neighborhood, we're pretty well harvested in this area around Hamilton, Michigan. And there's not a whole whale of a lot of green left out there on the fields. However, many of our cover crops carry on. A few things I'm curious about. We do have, there's a whole lot of volunteer wheat in this plot. This started out as a test plot for Michigan State's wheat. Now, I had suggested to the owner that he might want to come through here and peel off the buckwheat, and it looks like maybe he did run his combine through here. Oh, nope, there's some. There's a little bit of mature buckwheat seed on here. You can kind of see that there. Now, given how thin the bird food's going to be this year, I guess I'd kind of expect a lot of that to disappear, but we'll kind of move through the plots here. This is crimson clover here, growing between the wheat stubble, and you can see that looks great. Lots of biomass coming in nice and thick. Now, see, that's interesting. That almost looks like there's a little bit of, I guess that's wheat coming up trying to flower. No kernels in there. Yeah, I don't feel any kernel in that at all, but it did attempt to flower, so I guess we got a second flush out of that. Maybe that's barley that was contaminating his wheat or something. Interesting. Anyhow, here's some more of our clover, also looking good in there. This would be red clover. You can pick out red clover by that kind of watermark on the leaf. That tells you that's red clover. Red clover is a little more of a perennial, and usually the cost of the seed keeps people from getting into that. This is Barocco white mustard, as I recall. I just want to pinch those heads and see if we got any seed forming in there. Maybe a little bit. But one thing that's interesting, that's still flowering. A little tiny bit here in November. It's only about 40 degrees today, so I don't see a lot of insects working on this, but boy, there is not a heck of a lot of flowering plants around for the bugs to work on anymore, so certainly did the world a favor by having that out here this year for our pollinators and all that. Here's one of the first of several, at least 3 different tillage type radishes or daikon type radishes. You can see they're starting to get a little bit burned from the cold temperatures. We've had a few pretty hard frosty nights. Let's see if I can get a radish out of the ground here. That right there is why guys are so excited about that. You can kind of use my hand for reference to see how deep that is. That's not real deep for these tillage type radishes. But we did not add any additional fertility to this. I think some of our farmers with more manure to put on the ground certainly were making bigger radishes than these, but certainly doing some good for us. Here we have hairy vetch, one of my favorites for corn soy rotations. You can see how heavy that is coming in, and it's really aggressive, thick mat. Lots of biomass. This is actually a blend with some hairy vetch and tillage radish, and I believe yellow blossom sweet clover in there. Yeah, that's probably the sweet clover there coming through. Again, a good compaction buster, and the hairy vetch is good for about 120 to 140 pounds of nitrogen. Another one of our blends with some radishes. Oh, hey, there's some radishes to write home about. Oh, look at that thing. Yeah, well, I broke her off, but there's about a foot of radish sticking out of the ground there. God, I might have to take that home and eat it. That looks delicious. But that's a good biomass builder. Now, that'll actually winter kill and be here next year, releasing that good nitrogen that it's soaked up through the season. So that's pretty exciting. No, it looks like, now this is what I like to see. This is why we put it here, folks. Somebody's been out here digging around in that, seeing what's going on in there, doing some evaluating. That is what I like to see. Alright, well, let's keep going. Here we've got annual ryegrass. We do have a seed head forming there. This is a little hard to tell because it's been frosted a few times, but ryegrass is very shiny. Yeah, you can still see that there. So that's one of the ways you can really pick that out of the other grasses, is how shiny it is. Annual rye really gets a lot of pretty good press for its ability to penetrate real deeply, go down about 4 feet. And some of our folks get a little worried about killing it off, but what I am reading is that the key to that is to wait till it hits about 60 degrees air temperature and zap it with Roundup then, and it apparently dies pretty well. Some of the new varieties just for cover cropping are actually designed to break dormancy earlier, so they're a little more susceptible to herbicides. Next to this we have Jerry oats, and as you can see we are forming some oats on there. Just feeling them here, and we've got some germ in there, but I doubt that's going to form a real viable seed. Tear one apart here and look at it. I just don't think it's going to have enough to finishing, and kind of see there it's basically in the dough stage, and that like some of our other cover crops, that should winter kill and not be in your way come spring. We didn't do any weed control on this plot when we put it in. We just got in and no-tilled after a Michigan State wheat trial that was out here. And I suspect this is rye in here. You can kind of see the drill tracks from the rye. A little hard to pick out of the volunteer wheat. Tons of volunteer wheat in this plot this year. I think that might have to do with the kind of season we had. It just was so darn dry. I think we got a lot of low test wheat blowing out the back end of the combine. Here we've got Sudan grass and all of those sorghum, Sudan grass, Sudex and all of that. Nice thing about them is they drop dead very reliably. There's pretty much no question, as soon as that gets frosted, it's done. Here's another one of our blends. Big fan of blends personally. This is crimson clover, hairy vetch, and radishes. You can see the radishes are pretty prominent in that mix. They really stand up there, but the vetch is really coming on. The vetch will survive the season. Looks like we've got some annual rye in there as well, and that'll come through the season as well. We've got a blend featuring oats and radishes. You can kind of see the radishes coming on in there still. And the oats are hanging on through this early frosty part of the year. Aha! Now this is an interesting one. We got this from Desert Sun Marketing out of Phoenix, Arizona. This is Physalia tenactifolia. I might be murdering that, but Physalia for short. Common plant, planted in California. Apparently the vineyard guys like it a lot. Must not be too frost sensitive because it's alive, and it is starting to flower a little bit there. You might be able to see, and we're all very curious about that, how that's going to do. Curious if that'll drop dead. Hopefully Harvey and Craig will let us leave that in over the winter, and we'll get to see that come next year. We've got this is actually groundhog tillish radish, and you can see it's got another nice big tuber there. Oop, broke it off. Let's see if I can't get the rest of that puppy out of there. Oop. Yep. I just cannot pull that thing out. Let's try again, by golly. Well, Apparently they break easier than they pull, but you can see that thing is going down in there, making a great big pour. And like I said, hopefully we'll be able to get out here and do this again this spring and see if we can't have a good look at what that does next spring. And it's like rye in here some more. Did have some signs out there. I'm a little curious what the heck happened to my sign holders. Hopefully they're not in somebody's scrapyard. That's our crimson clover coming again. Again, you can tell it from the red clover, as we don't have that little watermark on the leaves. It's another one of our radishes. Kind of get a reference from my hand how big that thing is, and boy, that's really scavenging up some nitrogen from somewhere. That went down awful deep. Very nice. A lot of people really excited about these radishes. This would be one of the ground buster mixes. That's radishes and crimson clover. Although the radishes seem to really do a lot for the nitrogen scavenging and all that, the one thing people are a little concerned about is apparently they stink like the devil in the spring when they rot. So you might think about mixing your radishes with something else and suck up a little of that nitrogen and stink in the spring and maybe hold that nitrogen a little better. Here we've got Austrian winter peas with radishes. A little bit of flowering on the radishes here, but I don't feel any seed coming in there. And the winter peas will certainly come on, make a lot of nitrogen. They usually survive the winter, so they'll presumably be hoovering up that nitrogen. This was kind of a little wing dang I had. I actually tried this out here because I wanted to do it at home on my pastures, but this is millet mixed in with probably some radishes left over. I didn't really, by the time I got to this point, I didn't have much vacuum power left. That's interesting. I was out here a few weeks ago, or a month ago or so, and squeezing that millet head and getting a lot of seed. And boy, I'm not feeling a lot of viable seed in that at all. I don't know if that got frosted before it went to seed. I know millet's very frost sensitive, so maybe we didn't make a lot of seed after all. I thought we were going to feed the birds out here all winter, but maybe not so much. We also had some sunflower in there. Here's a sunflower head coming on. Not too much. Yeah, I don't feel any seed in there at all. And one of the kind of theories about this cover cropping is it allows you to put a diversity of different kinds of plants out there. So if you grew a cool season grass like wheat, maybe you want to cover crop with a warm season grass like millet. And I think this year there was some potential to double crop with that millet as well. This last bed, I guess my dad would call this a dog's breakfast. We kind of just loaded up all kinds of stuff in there. All my bits and pieces of leftovers. You can see we got a lot of radish, vetch, rye, ryegrass, little of that millet coming in there. Covering all our bases. So we've got things that are gonna come on quickly and develop quick. We got other things that'll hang in there through the winter. A couple of things to consider with these cover crops. You know, if we're out there producing something that's gonna have a little seed in the field for our wildlife, certainly if you're wildlife people, that's something to think about. I guess I'm of a mind thinking that in this world of Roundup ready crops where our weed control is pretty good, we don't have to worry quite so much about weed pressure and all that, because we're going to get in there and take care of that in the spring anyhow when we plant. Certainly nice to have something green and for the deer and the rabbits and the critters out wandering around in the spring. And winter, certainly if you've seen fields of winter rye and winter wheat, winter rye especially, Not very much darkening on that. I just see we've got some kind of a radish here, oilseed radish, and this one's forming some pods. We'll just crunch that up, see if we see any viable seed in there. And I guess the answer would be no on that. No seed coming on in there. Anyhow, this is Mark Ludwig from the Allegan Conservation District. This plot is still here. I think I'm going to leave the sign up even though our informational signs are gone and my information sheets are gone. We'll leave the sign on the road. So come on out and take a look at it. Located on 47th Street, just north of the town of Hamilton, between 137th and 139th Avenue. It is private property, so if you come to visit, please be respectful. Thanks again.